Hello, this is Brian Fisher. I'm a Senior Enterprise Monitoring Consultant for Prolifics, an IBM business partner. And today I'm going to discuss how to simplify administration with SmartCloud Application Performance Management. Now this is a presentation that I delivered earlier this year at Pulse 2013. And in this presentation you'll see a recorded live demonstration that I had done at the time in order to explain how to implement the strategy in your environment. Let's begin. So we're going to be talking about IBM Tivoli Monitoring, ITM. I'm going to do an overview of that very quickly. Then discuss typical situation management challenges that we see today. In particular, we're going to be focused on managed system lists, or MSLs, and how we manage situations. Next, we're going to talk about a new streamlined situation strategy that I recommend to all of our customers. This strategy requires no dependency on MSLs. It makes it easy to determine what situations are running where, and simple to manage one-off situations. Then we'll go into a summary. So ITM overview. The core functionality of ITM is focused around situations. And situations can be broken down into three components. The formula, which essentially is what conditions to check for. The sampling interval, which determines how often to check for those conditions. And the distribution, essentially where to check for those conditions. Now situations can also leverage managed system lists, which are essentially a static grouping of managed systems. They're assigned as a member of a situation's distribution, and each agent type on its system has its own managed system name. As you see here, I put 3. For example, Linux OS agent has its managed system name, Windows OS agent, and WebSphere agent. And the third we're going to be talking about is different classes of situations. Now this is a grouping that I recommend all of our customers to take as an approach for situation management. And that's to break down your situations into two distinct groups. One is a standard situation, which essentially is designed to be distributed globally, a typical situation that you want to monitor everywhere. And then one-off situations, where they're supposed to be distributed locally to a specific system, whether you need to adjust the thresholds or the resources that you're monitoring. Now, what are some of the typical situation management challenges we see today? Well, one is that there's no simple way to assign a new managed system to a set of standard situations. Now, this means if I have a new system that comes online and I install my Linux OS agent to it, and I want to distribute all my standard situations for that agent type to it, I would today have to go into each managed system list that is assigned to these standard situations in the distribution and add this new system. Now, if you're using one MSL for all of your standard situations, then this is not too difficult. But if you like using MSLs in a more granular fashion and maybe break down each into a grouping of resources, say MSL for all disk situations or an MSL for all CPU and memory situations, then I have to go into each one of them and add this new system to those managed system lists. And this is an ineffective and tedious, time-consuming process. Also, there's no simple way to distribute a new standard situation to all existing managed systems. So in this scenario, I have a brand new situation that I want to distribute everywhere. It's a standard of mine. So in order to do that today, I would have to manually define the distribution for all of these new situations. So depending on the number of new situations you have and the number of MSLs, this can also be very tedious and a time-consuming process. And thirdly, there's no simple way to manage one-off situations for a specific managed system. And what I mean by this is one-off situations today are defined in the same manner as typical situations, meaning they're defined in the situation editor. So there's no logical organizational structure used in the situation editor. So those one-off situations are in the same listing as your typical or standard situations. So it becomes a very tedious and time-consuming process just sifting through that list and finding the one-offs versus the standards in order to make the changes necessary. Also, we see an issue with there being no simple way to identify which systems a specific situation is distributed to when you're using MSLs. So in this scenario, I have a customer approach me and say, hey, I like the situation we've created. It's very important to me that we monitor these resources. I want to know where this is being monitored on all the systems. I want to know which systems this specific situation is being monitored on. Well, if I'm using MSLs, that means I have to go into that situation editor's definition. I go into the distribution. I see it's an MSL it's distributed to. And then I have to identify all of the managed systems that belong to that MSL or multiple MSLs. And it becomes a very difficult process to do that mapping and also time consuming. But the opposite direction is even worse, because there's no easy way of identifying which situations are distributed to a specific managed system. So the customer comes to me and says, hey, this system is of high importance to me. It runs our critical applications. I want to know all the situations that are running on it to make sure we're monitoring all the resources that are important to us for this critical application. Well, today I would have to go into each of those situations, go into the distribution, and if there's managed system list it's distributed to, then also do the mapping there between that and the managed system that is of importance. So I do all this mapping just to find out that the vast majority of the situations I'm looking into don't even have this particular managed system distributed. So I'm wasting my time looking at situations that have no impact to the answer. Also, just the use of managed system lists alone can become cumbersome to manage. And what I mean by this is, if you use managed system lists as I see most enterprises use it, they use it in a very granular fashion. They like to break it down into smaller chunks as possible in order to make it easy on them for distribution time. But this becomes more difficult as you have to add more and more systems to more and more managed system lists. So that approach becomes an ineffective manner of managing situations once you start growing. Now, let's talk about the Streamlined Situation Strategy that I've developed. This strategy leverages situation groups, which is a little known feature. You can create a different situation group for a set of standard situations and one-off situations. So that makes identifying these situations much easier and can be done in a much more rapid fashion. By leveraging these situation groups, we can assign situations as members, and this gives the added flexibility that situations do not have to be monitored by the same agent type. And you'll see more about this in the demo, but what I mean by that is essentially I can create a situation group and have situations from a Linux OS agent and a Windows OS agent as members of the same group. So that vastly reduces the number of situation groups I have to manage, because I don't need to create a grouping for each agent type. Also, we assign managed systems for distribution. So this takes away our dependency on managed system lists altogether. And managed systems do not have to be the same agent type even in the distribution. So I can take a grouping of my situations and distribute it to Windows agents and distribute it to Linux agents. And as we see in the next bullet point, situations are only monitored or evaluated by the respective agent, essentially no unnecessary monitoring. So the solution is smart enough to identify that I have Linux situations, and I distribute it, quote-unquote, to Windows systems in the Distribution tab. But it's not going to monitor those Linux situations on those Windows systems because those attribute groups don't exist for that agent type. So you don't have to worry about unnecessary monitoring. But this, again, vastly reduces the number of situation groups and gives us the flexibility of using managed systems rather than managed system lists. By doing this, it gives us the ability to easily determine systems on which a situation is distributed. So there's no longer a need to determine which managed systems belong to a specific MSL any longer, because I'm going to quickly determine which systems a particular situation is distributed to. And we're also able to easily determine which situations are distributed to a specific managed system. There's no longer a need to open up each situation in the editor and note only the situations which are distributed to a specific managed system, as you'll see in the demo. So as you see here, I have the object group editor opened, and I have created a handful of situation groups already in order to show the process. So I'm going to be clicking on one of the situation groups called Pulse TST Mem. Now I have a naming convention that I like to use here. Obviously it's for Pulse, but TST is to indicate this is test situation group, and Mem indicates that these are memory situations. So I've given myself the ability to use a granular approach here and assign as members all my memory situations. Now if you notice in the name I don't reference any agent type, because as you can see in the members, I can assign members of different agent types. I have a Linux OS agent memory situation and a Windows OS memory situation distributed as a member. Now in the Distributions tab, we see I'm not assigning any managed systems to this situation group, and that's because this is essentially a child situation group. I'm going to use this child situation group in order to distribute it using a parent situation group, as we'll see. Now here's the parent group I call Pulse TST, meaning it's going to contain all of the situations, all the test situations, no matter what resource they're monitoring. And we see here I have three members. I have the CPU situation group, the disk situation groups, and the memory situation groups. And if we see by going into the Assign Object Members section, we can expand our CPU group, and we notice we can see which situations are a part of that group. Without having to go into another window, without having to make extra clicks, I'm able to quickly see what situations are assigned to this group. So, and you can see the different agent types again for the situations. Now, here is where I assign the distributions. So I assign both of my Windows OS agents and my Linux OS agents. I only have two in this case, to this situation group. So I'm going to monitor essentially the Windows situations will monitor on the Windows system, and the Linux situations will monitor on the Linux systems, without the need to create different situation groups for each. It's smart enough to do that mapping for us. So this is where the flexibility comes into play and reduced complexity. So let me go through how we do one-off situations. Now as we see here, I have a naming convention. It's a Pulse TST, but instead of a resource grouping, I recommend using a server name or a managed system name in this case as part of this situation group name. And that's because I just want to have one situation group for all one-offs for this particular or this specific managed system. whether it's CPU, memory, or disk. If it's a one-off for this system, I want it to be a member here. And this makes it very easy for me to manage all one-offs for this specific system. So typically, you might have a single system that's running on slower or faster hardware types, and all the situation thresholds for all of your standard situations are going to be tweaked or modified slightly, maybe because of the hardware it's running on, the platform it's running on, or maybe you just know some information about this application runs hot. So I'm able to modify all of its one-off situations in one grouping, and that's why I do it this way. And we see here I have the Linux OS agent situation here, and if we go to the distribution tab, we see here there's no parent-child relationship anymore. I statically assign that specific managed system in the distribution here, as that's why I make that part of the name of the situation group, because it's only relevant to this managed system. So let me show you what it looks like after we've done the work inside the situation editor. So we're going to go to our situation that we created, and we're going to see in the distribution tab for our CPU assignment here, we're going to see that by hovering over the distribution tab, we notice first of all that the assignees are grayed out, meaning they can't be modified. And that's because it says this assignment was contributed by group membership. So we no longer have to go into the situation editor and mess with this distribution tab any longer. We're doing that all within the situation grouping. But because we're using managed systems, if I want to identify all of the systems where a specific situation, in this case this CPU situation, is running on, I can go here, no longer need to do a mapping between MSLs and managed systems, because they're all managed systems in this list. So that's how we do that. So we go on and we see how we also can manage our one-off situations inside the situation. So here's the one-off situation, and we see here that the assignment again was contributed by the group membership, but in this case it's that one specific managed system that we've assigned. Now I have a naming convention where I have usage high _1, which essentially means this is a primary or the standard situation, and 2 means it's a secondary situation or a one-off, meaning the thresholds are different, but the resources is monitoring are the same. So that's another naming convention that I use here. So let's go through the process of how we would create a new situation. So I'm just going to copy one of the existing situations, and I'm going to give it a name based off of my naming convention, and I'm going to simply create one for high input-output usage. So here again I'm making some changes just to keep the description and the name of the situation to match my standards. So it's a pulse situation for a Linux OS agent type. It's going to be monitoring CPU I/O wait time, and it's going to be a primary situation. So I'm going to just change my attributes as necessary, delete the ones that aren't necessary, and add my threshold value. Now, if we go in the distribution tab, we have nothing assigned. We're not going to make any assignments here. That's all we need to do. We're done inside of the situation editor. Very quick, very efficient, very easy to manage. Now we go back into our object group editor for our situation group of importance. Okay? So we're going to the Pulse TST CPU situation group, because this is the situation group for all CPU situations, and that's what I created. So now I go into the members and I look at Linux OS members, and I find the situation I just created, and then I essentially assign him as a member. And that's it. I'm done. He's already assigned the distribution based on the parent situation group. If we go back in the situation editor and we go to distribution, he's assigned all of the systems that are in my enterprise with very minimal amount of work. So essentially, it doesn't matter how many managed systems we have in our environment. If I want to distribute a new standard situation which I just created to all my systems in my environment, I can do that with a minimal amount of clicks. This is a very time-saving effort, reduces complexity, and makes administering the product much more simple. So in summary, we provide this simplified strategy provides a quick time to value by leveraging situation groups. It's a straightforward grouping of situations. It's a much more manageable method of scanning for situations of consequence because I can simply go into the situation group and see what situations are members. And it streamlines the identification of the systems on which a situation is running because I can simply go into the situation group distribution and see all of the managed systems where those situations are distributed to. Also, assigning a single distribution list for all standard situations. So this makes my life a lot simpler. It's easy to identify which situations are running on a particular system. That makes my life so simple because I can just go into the situation editor, go to the distribution, see the assignments based off the group membership, and there's my magical list. I don't need to do any mappings. It also gives you a practical manner to maintain one-off situations. So it gives this flexibility to confine all the one-off situations for a specific system to a single group and makes it easily identifiable within the object group editor. So all of this, in summary, makes my life easier, makes it simpler to maintain, makes it simpler to administer, makes my life much easier when I add new situations or add new systems, and in general, it's a more effective manner to manage your ITM environment. So I want to thank you for your time for watching, and if you have any questions, you can email me at bfisher@prolifics.com. Please follow me at Brian_C_Fisher on Twitter. There I'm posting how-tos, gotchas, updates, important updates that IBM provides. And a simple 140 character limitation gets you the information that you're interested in. And also, if you want to contact me on Yahoo I am at bfisher_prolifics. Thank you and have a great day.